You're listening to School Counseling Simplified, a podcast with easy-to-implement strategies for busy school counselors. Here's your host, Rachel Davis from Bright Futures Counseling.
Hey listeners, let me let you in on a little secret. You don't have to stress about planning your class lessons, small groups, and individual sessions anymore. My school counseling membership program, Impact, is here to help. So, what do Impact members get? Monthly curriculum plans across all 3 tiers, SEL lessons, small groups, individual, and seasonal activities, step-by-step video implementation guides, bi-weekly Zoom coaching calls with me, and an exclusive Facebook group community. This membership is designed for school counselors who want to deliver the best possible content to their students, but who also want to just press the easy button. You'll get access to monthly curriculum plans, resources, support, and community so you can deliver quality, engaging, life-changing counseling lessons to your kiddos. So what do you think? Are you ready to make an impact? Join today at stressfreeschoolcounseling.com/impact. Hey there, thanks for listening to another episode of School Counseling Simplified. So I hope you are having an amazing summer. I hope you're relaxing and doing all of the things. One of the things I'll be doing is actually going to ASCA. So I'm super excited. I'll be going next week. If you are there, I would love to connect with you. Please reach out to me on Instagram at Bright Futures Counseling and let me know. Maybe we can meet up for a cocktail or mocktail. I love Vegas. I'm excited. So let me know if you're going. I can't wait to connect with some of you, hopefully in person. But today I want to talk to you about small groups. So during the month of July, we are going to do a deep dive on small groups. Now you may be thinking, didn't you do a podcast series on small groups before? And I did. Back in March, I believe it was episodes 28 to 31, I talked a lot about small groups. I even ended in a YouTube video showing you a mock small group demonstration. It's pretty funny. So head back to those episodes 28 to 31 if you want to check out that. But I thought as we're going back to school season, I know it's summer, but you may be thinking about back to school or prepping for back to school. I know many of you go back in August, maybe even early August. So this is the perfect time to chat about small groups. I really want to do a deep dive here, and I want to share with you this month a few things. Today I'm going to talk to you about everything you need to know about establishing small groups. And then next week we'll talk about how to use that small group data. Then we'll move into how to organize your small group materials. And lastly, how to design a small group curriculum that works. So that's our series that we're going to be focusing on in July. So I'm super excited about it. I hope you are as well. So let's dive in. So today, like I said, I want to share with you everything you need to know about establishing small groups. So this is a 3-step process. Now, I listen to a lot of podcasts, and something that I find helpful when it's in an auditory format are lists or numbers or 5 strategies or 4 ways, and you can kind of hear the outline in your head. Now, I like doing this, and someone who does this well is Amy Porterfield. She has a marketing podcast that I listen to, but she does a really good job at explaining things clearly with a list, and you can tell she's following an outline. Now, I tend to ramble and talk to you guys like we're just sitting here having a cup of coffee, which is great, and that's totally the vibe that I want to put out. But at the same time, I want it to be easy for you to follow and understand. So I'm making an effort to make these very clear and concise and give you a formula or a format to follow. So I hope you find this helpful. It's funny because I kind of did this back when I was little. Growing up in church when I was really little, I didn't really understand the sermon or whatever, and we would just like draw or color or play. But then as I got a little older, I think like upper elementary school, my dad was like, hey, you should start like following along and see if you can take notes. So he bought me this like cool multicolor notepad and pens. Really gave me ownership of the experience. Looking back on it, cool parenting move there, Dad. One I may have to recycle. But he gave me, my notepad, and he said, I want you to try to follow along. Take some notes. That's all he said. Well, I started to realize and to catch on that the sermon our preacher was delivering followed a format of, he would have his bullet points. Like, he didn't directly say that, but you could tell in the way he was talking, it would be, the 3 S's of something. It followed a format and a style. So it almost became a game where I would try to find out, his headings and his bullet points. And so that was a cool way to follow along. And then it also kept me in check for paying attention, because if I missed one, I was like, ooh, I missed that one. Anyway, it's kind of a side note. That's why I need the outline. Back to small groups. So I want to tell you 3 things about what you need to know when it comes to establishing small groups: referrals, forming groups, and scheduling. So let's start with the referrals. So a referral is when a parent, a teacher, the principal, or maybe the student themselves refers themselves for counseling because they think that they would benefit from the service. So how you're going to collect referrals, there are a few ways you can do this, and it's really quite simple. So you may be receiving referrals that sound something like this now. You're walking down the hall and a teacher stops you and says, oh, you got to see Johnny for counseling. He needs to come in. Or maybe you see a parent at the car pickup line, or maybe even out in public, and they pull you aside and mention something. This is the worst way to do it. This is not how we want to do it, because it is informal and unorganized. So instead, if that happens, which it will, even after you establish these systems, I encourage you to direct people to your systems. And here's what those systems are. You would need to create a referral form. So the referral form is going to say the student's name, grade level, teacher, or homeroom teacher, depending on their age, and then the area of need. So this is where you can have things like self-esteem, bullying prevention, conflict resolution, anger management, social skills, and so on. Also, be sure to have an other or etc. spot, maybe a little spot for notes. And then if you like, you can have the urgency of the referral. So something like, this student needs to be seen ASAP, within a week, within a month, as soon as you can get to it, however you want to do that. Now, these will be the referrals that you're using with parents and teachers. You can also do student self-referrals. They're similar: student name, student teacher, and then grade level. Then you can have the topic. Make sure that they're in kid-friendly terms if you're working with little ones, like friendships, schoolwork, family. Keep it simple. You could even have visuals. And then also have their urgency as well. And for the little ones, or to keep it visual and simple, you could have, I've seen storm graphics. So maybe you have a sunshine, get to it, we can talk when you get a chance. Maybe it's a cloud, please talk to me soon. Or maybe it's a lightning bolt, talk to me right away. Something like that. So hopefully that kind of paints a visual in your mind of how you can simplify this for students. Now, everything I just described, I was referring to kind of like a printed sheet of paper. So that's the old school, most basic way to do it, is you would have printed sheets of paper. Now you could have these in your office. People come by, hey, I want to refer Johnny to counseling. Great, here's a referral form. Give it to the parent, give it to the teacher. You could have a little mailbox outside for the kids to put referral forms in. I've seen these done well with a mailbox, wooden box with a slit in the top. They put it in there. That way other students cannot dig through to see them. I had a manila folder and just monitored it, and that worked well. These paper forms you could also have out at a back to school night on the table to give them to parents as you're meeting them. Keeps them in the front office. I always give some out to teachers at the beginning of the year, so they just have them in their class. That way they don't have to come to you, hey, I need the referral form. If they're thinking of it, they have a stack, they can complete it. You could put them in the staff lounge by your boxes, right? So they could fill one out, slip it in your box, things like that. So those are examples of the paper old school referral form, which I've honestly been using up until the pandemic. Now then, I take that back. At the beginning of 2019-2020 school year, I did go digital. But before that, I was all paper. It totally works. It's classic. But as we have seen and as we have been forced to experience over, the last year or so, digital, it can be done digitally as well. And sometimes the digital way is even better. So the digital way would be to create a Google form. So I love to do a Google form. They're super simple to set up. You have the same questions there, and then you can have a link to the form on your school website, or if you have a counseling website, anything like that, link to the form, parents click it or teachers click it, and they can quickly fill in the referral. And you get it instantly. So this saves time, because what if they say it's urgent, but you don't only check your box in the morning or something like that, right? So that's a way that the digital form is a benefit. For the students, you can make it fun, and this is especially fun for secondary kiddos, is to create a QR code, and you can have it outside your office, on your door, and they can scan the QR code to pull up the student referral form and complete it and submit it. So that was kind of a fun thing to do. So those are ways that you can create your referral forms. You can do the paper version or the digital version. Now, I do think a big part of the referral forms are getting people to actually use them. So you may need to show them how to use them. That means showing teachers, parents, and students how to refer to counseling. So again, if you're at a back to school night, you can have some forms out and explain to parents, complete this referral form. Or if you're more digital, do a screencast walkthrough. So record your screen showing teachers and parents how to find the referral form, how to complete it, and how to submit it. Then you can share that video tutorial and they can watch and see how simple it is. Or if you're with teachers, you can do like a meet the counselor activity, like at a staff meeting at the beginning of the year, explaining your services that you provide and how they can refer kiddos to you. You can also do the Meet the Counselor with the kids and explain to them how they can use the QR code or where they can find the paper forms to self-refer. So that was a lot on how to gather referrals, and that was kind of a deep dive on referrals themselves. I didn't realize I had so much to say. But the referral process, this is where you're finding your kiddos, right? So we want this to be efficient and clear and easy for everyone to access. So find what works best for your school, whether it be paper or digital. Maybe it's a combination. Yeah, I suggest a combination. Have the paper forms, but also have digital. People can do what they feel most comfortable with. Now, that's how you're going to receive new referrals. But maybe it's, the first day of school, no one's referring kids yet, right? It usually takes a couple weeks for these things to drip in. But you may want to form groups already. So what you can do, contact teachers from the year before. So reach out to teachers. Now you can do this if you are returning to the school or if you're the new counselor. Either way it works. Find out which students were in counseling last year. And just because they were in counseling last year does not mean that they necessarily need to be in counseling again. But you can reach out to the teachers and just say, hey, I noticed these students were in counseling groups last year. Let me know. Just keep an eye out. Here's where you can access my referral forms. Let me know if you think they would be a good fit for groups this year. That's a way to kind of get ahead of it. Because oftentimes teachers don't refer. They have so much going on at the back to school time, beginning of the year. They don't refer until it's a big problem. So reminding them, you can keep a heads up for some kids. Remember, this is the referral process. Let me know if you need me, kind of thing. That's something you can do while you're waiting. And also, you can create some general preventative small groups. So for example, like a growth mindset group. Everyone could benefit from growth mindset. Whereas the anger management group maybe is only for those students who have, struggled with this and need to learn some coping skills. Growth mindset is a preventative type group you can lead. Also, I'm coming to mind is like a mindfulness group. I have a technology group, things like that are beneficial for all students. That being said, you want to do these groups during non-instructional time because a teacher or parent is more likely to be understanding if you're taking the kiddo, out of math to learn coping strategies, perhaps because their, self-regulation issues are interfering with math. But if it's a preventative thing, they'll probably be less supportive of them missing math time. So you can do these during non-instructional times, such as a lunch bunch. Maybe students sign up for the groups. Kids love coming to groups. They're fun, especially if you have games and stuff. So maybe you ask kids, who wants to be part of the growth mindset group. You might get volunteers. So that's something fun you can do during those non-instructional times. For example, I did with some 5th grade girls a relational aggression group. It was a lunch bunch, and it was open to all the 3rd grade girls, and a lot of them attended, and we had a lot of fun. We watched a movie. It was like an American Girl, Chrissa Stand Strong movie. We watched that and then had discussion about it. We did some role play. So that was an example of like a general preventative group that I did because it was grade level wide, optional if they wanted to drop in or not. Okay, so that's how you can select the students that you're going to see for your group. That's step 1. Now, step 2 when it comes to establishing small groups are forming the groups. So now that you have your referrals, you're going to use those referrals to form your group. So you're going to say, oh, look, we have 3 kids that got referred for anger management. Let's put them all together in this anger management group. Simple as that. Now, I encourage you to use and create a caseload spreadsheet. You may have heard me talk about this before, a caseload spreadsheet, and I can link to one in the show notes. But a caseload spreadsheet is a Google Sheet, is what I like to use, where you'll have your student's name and some info about them, their area of need. And I have this for every student I'm seeing, individual and group. And then you can look and say, oh, these kids are similar grade levels and similar area of needs. Let's form a group. And I then color coordinate my caseload spreadsheet based on that. So I'll link to in the show notes where you can get a caseload spreadsheet and a visual example of one, because it's easier to see than for me to explain here in an auditory setting. Now, as you get these referrals, you do want to keep in mind grade level, right? So I get asked questions about this a lot, like can a third grader be seen with a fifth grader, and so on. And so I don't like to do more than 2 grade levels apart. Like I wouldn't put second with fifth, but I would put third with fifth. It's okay to mix grade levels. Sometimes the scheduling can get a little trickier, but do what is easiest for you and what works best. I've had like the same topic but 2 smaller groups just because the scheduling allowed, or maybe if everyone's available at the same time, you have 1 big group, and that saves you time as the counselor, right? So your group size can vary anywhere from like 3 to 7, depending on the physical space you have in your office. But you could use like a classroom to meet. That's what I did with the relational aggression group I was talking about earlier. But I think it's okay to mix grade levels. You just want to be mindful of making the students feel comfortable so you can have, them a buddy. So you don't want it to be 1 third grader with 4 fifth graders, or they'll likely not participate because they may feel intimidated. And on the flip side, you don't want to have 1 fifth grader with a bunch of third graders because they may feel like it's too babyish. Now, you can also look at small group data to see who needs more or less intervention. Now, in the next episode, I'm going to talk more about data, but I did want to share here how you can find students for your groups based on looking at the data. So think about your pyramid of intervention, right? You have your tier 1, those are your class lessons that everyone's getting. Tier 2, that's your small groups that only some students are getting. And then tier 1, that's the individual counseling that even less students are getting, right? So when you're forming your small groups, these are students, not every kid at the school is going to be in a small group. These are only students who have, been referred to you for a certain area of need. And then other students, maybe it's a more severe area of need. So that's why you would see them individually. They need a little more support than the small group can provide. Hopefully you're tracking and collecting data, and I'll link to a blog post about how to do that throughout the school year. This is a great time to get started because the year's about to start. But when you collect data, something powerful it can do is it can help you form your small groups. So if you look at individual data and you do a self-assessment with a kiddo, or you do parent-teacher surveys, and you see that the child has progressed in their individual counseling and that it was effective, so they don't need continued individual counseling. But they may not be ready to go straight back into just the class lessons. They may still need a little more support, so you can move them down the tier to groups. So that's how you could find people for your groups. Former individual students who have progressed but could still benefit from a little support, put them in a group. Or on the flip side, if it's someone who's been getting the class lessons each month, but you notice they could use a little more support, you would move them up into the group tier. So that's a way you can form groups, moving kids from tier 1 to tier 2, or from tier 3 back down to tier 2 if they've shown improvement based on data, which again we'll talk a little more about in the next episode. And the final way that you can find students to form your groups is you can check out students who have been referred individually. So maybe the parent or teacher indicated, Jessie, social skills, I think she's individual, it seems like a high need. And then someone else said, Raul, social skills, I think he should get individual sessions. Because you can have on your referral forms, do you think the child would benefit from individual or group? And that's just their input, and I encourage you to talk to the parent and teacher about it. But if they ask for individual, that doesn't necessarily mean that's best for the child. You know this as the counselor. Oftentimes, parents always think, individual, but the groups are really beneficial as well. So perhaps you have, 2 referrals where parents indicated that they wanted individual, both with the same topic of social skills, but you talk with the parents, you're taking a look at it, and you're like, I don't think they both need individual. It doesn't seem to be like that high of a need. So instead, you can group students with similar needs together to save time. So instead of you having, because you have limited time and you're trying to serve as many students as possible. So instead of you seeing one student for social skills for 30 minutes and then another student for social skills for 30 minutes, you can see them both at the same time for 30 minutes, if that makes sense. So that's another way you can form a group. So use those referrals, use previous data to see who needs more or less intervention, group together similar areas of need on students who may have been referred individually, and then of course you can use that caseload spreadsheet. Okay, so we've talked about referrals and forming those groups. Now let's talk about scheduling the groups. So this part can be a little tricky, but what I recommend is that you use that caseload spreadsheet. Again, I'll link to it in the show notes so you can get a visual of what I'm talking about here. But it has different columns, and in those columns it's kind of a checklist. So it'll be something like, receive the referral, who you received the referral from. Then you can put if you've sent the permission slip, received the permission slip, contacted the teacher for the best time, contacted the parent, and scheduled. So I always recommend sending permission slips and communicating with parents. Even if your school, I get asked this a lot, do I need to do this for every kid? And your school, may vary on actual policy, but I think it's best. Why would you not want to share with the parent, get them on board. Sometimes it takes a little convincing, but then they can support what you're doing at school, at home, and we just want the whole team involved here. We're not trying to keep it, separate or secretive or anything. So reach out to the parent. Phone call is best, but you can do email and say, hey, this is if the parent did not refer them. If the parent referred them, when they refer, you can follow up and, have a conversation. But if the teacher refers or if the student self-refers, reach out to the parent. You can say, hey, we got this referral. I think a group would be great for your child. I'm going to send home a permission slip, or here's attached in this email is a digital permission slip, whatever. Once we receive your permission slip, we'll find out the best time of teacher and schedule them. Or if you're doing a group, you can create a group letter that you send to all parents. This is kind of like, kill two birds with one stone. And it says, hey, this is the group we're doing. Your child's been, and I always like to use language that makes it sound really positive and preventative. Like your child has the opportunity to participate in this group. So make it sound good. You don't want, mental health has such a stigma and counseling has a stigma. We want to really communicate how beneficial and awesome this is. So, your child's been, selected to be a part of this group. And you can have a letter about this is what the group's going to cover. Here's some of the topics we're going to cover. Attaches the permission slip. Please let me know if you have any questions. So that's a way you can, get ahead of answering their questions by really sharing how long the group's going to meet. If it's my child going to miss class, you could even set it up. I just had this idea right now, but that would be cool, like a frequently asked questions thing. Like, will my child miss instructional time? How long will the group meet? How many other kids will be in the group? Things like that. That's a cool idea you could do. So after you have the conversation with the parent and the permission slips are sent, this is the actual scheduling. You're going to contact the teacher and find our teachers, because it's a group, and find out the ideal time. And then it does take a little back and forth of email to figure out the time that works best for everyone. Then you'll schedule reoccurring sessions in your calendar. And I recommend meeting once a week for 6 to 8 weeks and for about 30 to 40 minutes. So 30 minutes of core meeting time is great. The reason I say 30 to 40 is because you do want to kind of schedule a little travel time buffer in. So if your kiddos are older, maybe they just meet you at your office. I've done it where I've called the classrooms before. I worked at one school where everyone was constantly calling, and certain kids in classes, their job was to be the phone person. And it was kind of cool. You think it would disrupt the class, but it actually didn't. They picked up first ring and just kind of whispered in the back, like, Miss Randy's class, what can I get you? Or what? How can I help you? It was cool, and they got to practice their formality of being on the phone and answering the phone. So I would call sometimes and say, hey, can you send so-and-so to counseling? Or if they're real little, you might go pick them up. So you need to, factor in the travel time. You have to walk and pick up everybody. So that's why I say 30 to 40 minutes. Okay, guys, that is everything you need to know about establishing small groups, the referral process, forming the groups, and scheduling the groups. I have for you a freebie. It is a small group cheat sheet that I want you to download. So you can find that in the show notes or send me a DM for the link on Instagram at Bright Futures Counseling. But download that small group cheat sheet, and we'll talk next week. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for listening to School Counseling Simplified. You can find the links from today's episode in the show notes. If you'd like to connect with Rachel, she's on Instagram and Teachers Pay Teachers at Bright Futures Counseling. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any episodes of School Counseling Simplified. Talk to you next week.